Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hang Up. I'm Matt Dillahunty, and I served in the United States Navy for 8 years. And let me be clear, Pete Hegseth should be fired immediately, and there needs to be an extensive investigation beyond the hearings that are going on now, where Trump administration officials are knowingly, obviously lying on the stand. The administration's actively lying. They're playing with language, saying that they weren't war plans, and leaning on the fact that war has to be declared by Congress, just like the Vietnam War was a police action. Well, colloquially, things are a little bit different. They're war plans. They are technically military operations. They are actions. What was being discussed were times and details of military strikes. The individuals involved know that this is a huge problem, and we know this because we have recordings of them. They all seem to be experts in security when they were complaining about Hillary's email server. But partisan politics are irrelevant in this case. It might never have come to light that these individuals were discussing information on a non-secure server if they hadn't seemingly accidentally added a reporter from the Atlantic, who they are now disparaging for telling the truth. And some are even suggesting that he did something nefarious to get on that signal thread. First, that's not the way Signal works. Second, they should be thanking him, because if they had accidentally added someone else, this could have been so much worse. And third, even if Goldberg had managed to nefariously make his way onto that signal thread, that's the exact reason those unsecure channels are not to be used for this type of communication. It's still their fault. They have failed to follow proper procedure. If a reporter can get in, so can another reporter, or a spy, or some representative of a foreign government. And one of the people on the signal was in Russia at the time, where you have to know, if you're a U.S. government official, you are being spied on every second of every day. You're being bugged, monitored, all of it. This is completely unacceptable. And in other times and other administrations, this would spell the end for many. The military would be screaming about operational security. I'm tired of living in unprecedented times. Bring me back to precedented times. This is what happens when you bring in your friends and your supporters, whether they're qualified or not. Trump is rewarding loyalists with jobs they are not qualified to do and with pardons they should not be receiving. Trump is punishing dissension, and the folks that he called names like Little Marco are falling in line like good little soldiers. And everybody's picking up the party line and lying through their teeth. Instead of just acknowledging, yeah, we made a big mistake, things are changing, we have now figured out how this happened and it won't happen again. Nope. It's a lie, lie, lie. No, there was no classified stuff. Really? There were no war plans. You know what this was? This was gross negligence and incompetence. And metaphorically, heads should be rolling. Actions like this can compromise not only the effectiveness of the action that we're getting ready to take, but put lives of our soldiers in danger. They don't have the option of deciding that they don't get to follow this order, or we've been breached, so we have to stop. There are U.S. lives at risk in these things, but they don't care. Their incompetence put lives and the operation at risk, but they don't care. If some military person had put this signal group together, they would be heading for courts-martial right now. But we're on a clock. Please join me in welcoming tonight's guest, David Pacman, host of the David Pacman Show. David had me on his show what seems like a million years ago, when we were both kind of new to all this. Was supposed to be here in person, but unfortunately some illness and scheduling changed that. And we only have a 2-hour time slot. So let me stop jabbering and waste time. David, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's so good to be with you.
It's good to have you. We missed each other a couple different times. Real quick, for those who don't know, I mean, you've got a new book out, or coming out, and that was part of the reason for being down here. For the people who aren't like me, who just feel like I've known you forever, what's going on?
Well, we professionally, we got to the 3 million subscriber mark on YouTube. It was a very big day. It was like a phoenix rising over the horizon. The book is out. The book was out. It came out yesterday. I think it's doing well. I don't know. I mean, it's like you kind of have to wait a week to see how well it's doing.
Mm.
But the reviews are good, and only a couple dozen people are already furious about it. So that's like pretty good in my world, if that's the starting point. Only a few dozen people furious about something I did. And then meanwhile, I mean, MSNBC, CNN ratings are down, but independent progressive news, like what I do, we're having our best first quarter of a year ever. There's clearly people who checked out right after the election because they were despondent,
Right.
but they're back. And I think people now are kind of realizing if you check out, you're just kind of ceding power to the worst of the worst. And that's a sure way to lose indefinitely. So
Yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic that people are getting engaged and that there's kind of a reset going on.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to be. You can get fatigued so much. My friends who are not panicked are the ones who don't pay any attention to the news, don't pay any attention. They're scrolling TikTok for cat videos and not for news items and things like that. The rest of us, I was telling you before the show, I feel like I'm being punked, like there's a hidden camera somewhere, and this just isn't reality. By the way, for those of you who are watching, we've got just a 2-hour window here. I'm going to try to leave time for super chats at the end. So I'm like at 7:30, I'm going to have Arden jump in and say, "Hey guys, get to some super chats," because David's got to leave at 8. I will stay after if we're not done with super chats then. But I got a handful of questions for you before we move on to callers. And normally on this show, we prioritize theist callers wanting to call in and defend their views. We will still do that, but we will also be prioritizing callers with political questions or things where they might disagree with David or me or both of us or whatever. So go ahead and get your calls in, everything else. David, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican, but I am willing to vote for the best viable option, which is, for me, normally the Democrats, because the other people who might agree with me slightly more often get to a point where they have no realistic hope of being elected. Like I would have supported Bernie and others. But in a time like this, there are people who are holding out for the perfect candidate and so frustrated with the system that they are unwilling to compromise. And they seem like, especially on issues like Gaza, it seems that they, even though we know for a fact things would have been better under a Harris administration than under a Trump administration, folks seem eager to punish everybody on every issue until their pet issue is perfectly handled. What do you think we can do to help change that and find some way to make the world better so that the perfect isn't killing us off as the enemy of the good?
Well, let me get to just very quickly. I also am not a Democrat, and I vote for whoever is the best candidate. And in practical terms, it's often a Democrat. So I'm right with you. I don't really see political parties as more than a sort of corporation of sorts that seeks to justify its own existence and sort of place itself there indefinitely, no matter what's going on. So I'm 100% with you. I've never been a Democrat, and I certainly vote mostly for Democrats. That's true. You're also getting to something that I tried to talk about on my show and in the book, which is, this term, the echo machine. The right has used the echo machine in order to win and get power, whereas the left has been damaged by its echo machine. And you're getting to one of the critical reasons why, which is if you're someone who historically has voted for Democrats and you express, there's this one thing I'm kind of unsure about Democrats, at least before an election, you are welcomed with open arms into the Republican Party. They say, come on over. You have this one doubt. You disagree with us about everything else. Come on over. And then they use that to win elections. On the other hand, you're pointing out one of the flaws of the left, as I see it, which is that it uses some of the same tools that the right uses, but it's exclusionary rather than inclusionary, which is as soon as you have any difference, are we really part of the same movement? I don't really know that you're left enough, or I think you're just so wrong on this issue that it doesn't matter that we agree on 95% of stuff. And so the term echo machine, which is the title of my book, it's both about the problems with totally abandoning empiricism and fact, and I think that disproportionately exists on the right, but it's also about how the right has successfully built this machine. It includes media, it includes not caring about double standards, it includes claiming to support one set of principles, but then abandoning it as soon as it's inconvenient. And they've used it to win, whereas the left is not succeeding.
I wonder, anybody can say this. The left's going to accuse the right of lying and being evil and doing stuff, and the right's going to accuse the left of this. But from a factual standpoint, we know and can measure both whose policies would make which changes and when someone is just actively lying. I don't know that I can't imagine that there's been a president that was more obviously lying, unpresidential, undiplomatic, incapable of understanding even simple things. And his supporters don't seem to care. They've turned own the libs into some kind of mantra, and they've done all this fear mongering left and right. Is it a time? So here before the election, and I caught crap for this because we were in a panic. I was viewed as a blue no matter who position advocate, which is not the case. But when you have failed to build a viable third option or any other option, when you get down to where one of two people is certainly going to be the next president or the next official, you have to choose the one that's better. And the people who are dissatisfied on the left are people who are good people. The people who are upset about Gaza, they're opposed to genocide. They want, this to stop, and they're not willing to compromise on it. And then you're put in a position of saying, okay, but you have to compromise a little bit on this genocide stuff, because if not, it's just going to be worse. And Trump's going to turn it into, the Trump Israel Riviera. How are they going to be better off then? Is there viability for building a third party instead of just trotting out Jill Stein folks to give their money to and their vote to every couple of years? Could it be the case that people leave the Democratic Party, stay in their positions, run as independents to start building an unofficial kind of third party to get more viability and to have some leverage?
The answer is yes, if a few things change. One is the system we have, first past the post, does not lend itself well to third parties. The way that we finance campaigns, I think we really, for third party viability, of course, a proportional representation system would be great, but it's barely even worth talking about because that's so far off. But switching to public financing of elections with defined contribution limits would be one great step. And then some kind of single transferable voter ranked choice voting system also would be, I would say, realistically necessary. Because one of the big fears is in swing states, if you hate Trump and are sort of okay-ish with Harris, but the person you really like is fill in the blanks. If you vote for that third person, effectively, you're making it more likely that Trump is the winner in your state. And so there are ways to solve this. These aren't unsolvable problems. There's a bunch of different ranked choice voting systems and single transferable vote. So the package I outline, and I know it's not a super realistic package, is you really need to get away from first past the post, and then you've got to get to public financing of elections with defined election duration. So you can't start earlier and earlier raising more and more money. And those things don't seem to be likely anytime soon.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is, how do you get to that when the people who want it have zero control at this point? The left doesn't control anything. And by the way, between them, they keep caving. Now, when Schumer caved on the closure, my first thought was, oh, he's probably got a good reason. And then when he gave me his reason, I was like, I see where you're going, but you just cave for nothing. And aren't they going to do the things you're afraid of anyway? Because at this point, Trump is ignoring the judges that he feels like ignoring, criticizing, calling out, and basically dog whistling the ones that he'd really like to get rid of, and doing whatever he wants. And even like the Supreme Court has made a couple of rulings against him, nothing seems to be slowing it down. And we're sitting here where every day it's a new big deal to where, hey, you know what? Nobody's talked about Elon for 3 days because of Signalgate. So if we have no power, and if they are currently making changes that would further diminish the power of the left and any efforts to get ranked choice voting or any of those solutions, are we potentially heading towards civil war? Is civil war or a massive global conflict coming?
I try to avoid extremely dystopian and hyperbolic predictions when they're not appropriate. And the when they're not appropriate is like kind of the critical part of this whole thing. I'm not at the point of predicting it the way you're predicting it. And I don't make too many predictions just because I'm not very good at it. But I think what is tangibly different here is that everything we predicted so far about the second term has come true, which is he's really going to be completely unrestrained by having to run another election at some point. Well, that's going on. He's going to even further flout the norms, conventions, and even laws, much more so than he did in the first term. Well, that's already happening. The cabinet and the people around him are going to be even more obviously loyalists whose only sort of qualification is being suck-ups, right? I mean, it's a sort of like DEI or affirmative action of brown-nosing suck-ups, as opposed to the DEI that they're opposed to. So all of that stuff is happening. Civil war, I mean, no, I don't think civil war is likely. An authoritarian slide that distances us from allies and probably is a disaster for the economy. Yeah, I mean, that's seeming very plausible right now.
You mentioned he was unrestrained from running again, but then you've got, Steve Bannon, who, by the way, Governor Newsom did or will be having on his podcast along with Charlie Kirk. So Newsom's been a huge disappointment lately, agreeing with Kirk on trans issues and stuff. But when you say that he's doing that, Bannon is saying they're looking for a way to give him a third term. And everybody kind of, jokes and no, that can't happen. And really, the number of things I hear them say, and I'm like, yeah, that can't happen. Oh, that can't happen. And then they start happening. How serious do you think they are about getting him another term? And is there like a greater than 0% chance of that happening?
Listen, there's a greater than 0% chance of anything that is not scientifically impossible. So yes, there's a greater than 0% chance.
I don't a lot of leeway.
Listen, maybe I'm being naive. Okay. I think he's just going to leave. I think he's just going to leave after this term. I think Bannon is instigating and he knows everybody's going to take the bait. I know every time I say this, people go, no, but look at what he did in 2020. And I know what he did in 2020. I think he's just going to leave. And listen, we're assuming a lot about his health 3.5 years from now. I mean, this is an obese 80-year-old who doesn't exercise and eats fast food every day. I know he seems to be what's described as a super ager, but there's if you want to talk about predictions, there's a lot of people predicting the big 2025 story will be a Trump health event. So I don't think he's going to even really make an effort to stay. I don't.
Now, it may not be remotely necessary because the MAGA fan base are already established. And there was a moment in like 2018, 2019, where it felt like there was going to be a massive split in the Republican Party, and the MAGA branch was going to go one way, and the normal Republicans were going to go another way. And then after Biden got elected, that changed, and they're back in lockstep. And even when there's dissent there, they are still, they're not fighting with each other the way they were. They're calling each other out, but only in little bits, and they'll never hold each other accountable. And so whether or not there's a Trump health event, do we end up with J.D. Vance being the new figurehead for Project 2025 and the Christian nationalist think tanks that have been, backing some of this, so that we're just stuck. I mean, we've lost the Supreme Court for a generation, I think.
Yep.
I don't know if we've lost all branches of government for a generation as well.
No, I don't think we've lost all branches of government, but it does seem that JD Vance is sort of like the natural heir here. And I'm hearing rumors that the idea is to set up JD Vance to run in 28 with Donald Jr. alongside, which is sort of like the next iteration of the Trump family. I think there's a lot of unknowns there because, quite frankly, it doesn't seem like Trump really likes JD Vance very much. And he seems to much
Doesn't know his wife's name.
Yeah, didn't remember Usha's name. Seems to, at least for now, prefer the company of Elon. Here's the thing about JD. JD doesn't really have much to offer Trump in the way that, Elon has these businesses and he's wealthier than Trump, which Trump is very impressed by. So I think that there's the vague idea that Vance might be the heir apparent. But I'll be honest, I don't think it matters. 2028 is not going to depend on who Republicans nominate. Depending on what happens between now and 2028 and whether the left gets it together and how big of a disaster Trump is, that will be what the election will hinge on, whether it's Vance or Rubio, or I just don't think it's going to come down to that.
So I want to get you to expand on this. You've now been targeted by the administration a little bit. And so I saw the clip the other day, but tell us a little bit about what's going on, because this is a change, the way the new administration is going after independent media.
I'm not pretending that I am at this point personally being targeted, but what is going on is that the official Trump Rapid Response account, which monitors media and pulls stuff to antagonize the left, they are monitoring the show enough that they pulled a clip of me talking to Kathy Hochul, the New York governor, and they are, they pulled what they claim to be a gotcha, which is that she's saying she's only going to cooperate. She's only going to direct cooperation with ICE with regard to individuals involved. I think it was in violent crimes or something like that, but not just like random undocumented people. And they pulled this, and then Charlie Kirk started signal boosting it and Trump's official rapid response account. So the step that's been now gone closer is in term one, it didn't matter what happened on my show. It just didn't matter. No one associated with the administration was paying attention. Okay, now they're paying attention to what's happening on independent media. I'm not being targeted right now, but there are people watching what's happening on the big left-wing shows, and that's different. Sure. That's a new thing.
It is, and granted, you and I haven't gotten to hang out in a while, but I watch a ton of your content, and I won't name your competitors, but I've watched a bunch of them, and so many of them, it's like there are dudes that I genuinely love what they do and the way they put the information, and then there's the YouTube clickbait algorithm chasing game where I feel like there's 23 left-leaning talking heads that are running the same clip. And don't get me wrong, I'm an old guy. I'm not trying to be ageist, but a handful of them are new to all of this, and I don't know that they're adding anything other than reporting and scoffing. It's not like I'm not hearing ideas there. Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on, because we're stuck. Like, not just the Democrats, but the left, and anybody that's even close to left leaning is essentially stuck. And people are, this is why I asked about potential third parties and what it might take to build it. And, I would love for like Bernie to keep doing what he's doing with, his, oligarchy things, but to build a separate independent wing to help force change and to help push Democrats, Greens, whoever, in a direction that's better. Because I listen to like Hakeem Jeffries talking about, you can't swing at every pitch. And I understand and I agree. When just because Steve Bannon says something ridiculous doesn't mean you should be going out going, breaking news, Steve Bannon says something stupid. Well, that's not breaking news. Steve Bannon says something stupid or terrifying every time I hear him. But we need some kind of excitement. And so I want to run a couple of names by you as potential tickets. And yes, I think
can I address just one thing though, Matt, before we do that? Because you said something I think is important. If you want your content to be seen to a degree, you got to play the games that the platforms demand. So I've explained before, people say, David, some of your titles are clickbait. I am choosing titles that reflect the content of the video that are the most interesting title possible, right? So if Trump gives a speech and he's not taken out on a stretcher, and my title says he was taken out on a stretcher, that's bad. That's a problem. And in fact, there's some creators who do that sort of stuff. At the same time, Trump press secretary face plants again, she can't stop lying, is going to get a lot more interest than White House press secretary answers questions. And so, the podcast titles don't matter because the podcasts are not algorithmically based in the same way that YouTube is. So I think to some degree, you got to play the game for sure. And I think that as long as you're not being dishonest, that's always been my approach. Okay, so now you're going to run around on.
Yeah, that's something I've come around on. I just hit 200,000 subscribers just the other day, but I did all that without my channel being monetized. I didn't make any money off YouTube until December of last year. And I have this, I put up a thank you video. I have this notion that because I run in an arena of religious debates and political stuff where I'm under attack a lot, and there's a lot of challenges on the integrity, like, oh, Matt's only doing this for the money or whatever else. So I was like, I don't want to give them anything. So I didn't look. I've never looked at YouTube analytics. Actually, Arden was the first one to really look at the analytics on my channel and make some decisions. I didn't draw a check, but I didn't play the thumbnail game. I didn't do clickbait, and I was really opposed to it. And now I'm not, because if I had done that, I think that instead of 200,000 subscribers on my personal channel, I might be closer to 500,000 at this point, and would have made enough money to help build the channel, to build it up, closer. Because I mean, when I was on your show, I don't think actually AXP might have had more subscribers than you did at that point. I don't remember. I don't know where we were relative, because I don't ever pay attention to that. But you're right.
Let's see.
The game has to be played.
Yeah, you were on a while ago.
Yeah, be like,
I don't know what number of subscribers
12,
I had then, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah. And so you have to play this game. And the thing is, instead of me, this was my own little neuroses about, no, I need to maintain integrity. I need to be above the fray. Caesar must be above, or Caesar's wife must be above reproach thing. I'm here representing atheists and secular humanists, and I can't be the guy. And it turns out, it's just a big, dumb mistake. And it's okay, because I've learned and we're building. All right. Potential future tickets. And for these, I'm talking about like president, vice president. And I think we would probably agree that maybe what we might need is like a last minute quasi surprise that excites people like Obama. And it's really 4 years out. It's almost impossible to predict who's still going to be around and who's going to matter. But here's some names. AOC.
Yeah, if you had asked me 4 years ago, I would have said terrible idea. But her political instincts have improved significantly. Her connection to sort of like the real ways in which you get power and win elections have improved. And so I've come around significantly on AOC. Now, from a viability standpoint, I don't know. I kind of hesitate to play these games, because why do we need to let some consultant tell us who's viable, right? The voters ultimately are going to decide who's viable. The primary can decide who's viable. But in a primary voters do say, who do I think will be viable at the national level? So I don't know. But it's abundantly clear that AOC is one of the more recognizable leaders right now of the Democratic Party.
Tim Walz.
I think probably not.
Okay. Jon Stewart.
I think the thing that's difficult about Jon Stewart is what I think makes him interesting to people is the idea of, we've got our own celebrity, and he's a much smarter celebrity, and he's much better. And I get that. I do get that. But I don't think the left is as enamored with the idea of a celebrity candidate as much as it worked on the right. So I just don't know how it would play out. And also, I don't know if Jon Stewart would necessarily make any compromises. And you do need to make some compromises, I think, to run for president successfully. I'm not saying do immoral things, but I'm just saying in how you structure your campaign and operationally. And I don't know that he's willing to do that. So I love the idea. I think it's great. I don't know if it's really what the left is kind of like looking for.
I think one of the things that a lot of people are missing is, and maybe compromise is the wrong word to put on it, because people get taught to be uncompromising, stand by your principles. Instead, what they're missing is the opportunity for incremental changes. They
Yep.
want to go immediately right now to problem fix when we may have to go through 2 or 3 steps to get there. And there's a lot of people that seem to fail to recognize not just when progress is being made, but the potential to make progress towards something. Fourth name, Jasmine Crockett.
Mm. You know, I haven't thought about that one. I mean, listen, I think she's excellent. I
Yeah.
think she would get, so her appeal is the same thing as the liability, which is she's quite volatile in a way that I think is super interesting and is sort of like, I mean, even the whole Hot Wheels thing, which I'm completely against making fun of people for disabilities, but it does expose the double standard of the right, where now they care about making fun of disabilities, where Trump, mocked the
Mox
disabled
reporters,
reporter
yeah.
at the start of this whole thing, and they said that's not what he was doing. We don't. So I think she would really expose a lot of hypocrisy from the right. I think it's very interesting. 2028, I don't know. I mean, she's less experienced now than she probably needs to be, but 3 years
Right.
down the line, it'll be a different story.
3 years down the line, we'll all be veterans. I genuinely, I love a lot of the things from Jasmine. There's one thing that she did with the Governor Hot Wheels comment that really irked me, and it wasn't the comment itself.
Can I guess what it is?
Yes.
Was it that she said she was talking about his policy on transportation and using planes, trains, and automobiles to get migrants up north?
Yes.
Yeah,
Jasmine,
it's
that
so
was an
unbelievable.
obvious lie and an obviously stupid lie. What you should
Yeah,
have said, Jasmine, is, yeah, I called him Governor Hot Wheels. I'm not mocking his disability. I'm recognizing a fact. People have nicknames. You're going to occasionally use nicknames. If he feels insulted, I don't look down on him because he was in a terrible accident or uses a wheelchair. People throw out nicknames. What about the man in the White House who's now got little Marco working for him, and then go through the list of nicknames and go, I thought this was the world we were playing in now. I'd be happy to work with the governor of Texas if he weren't absolutely refused. That's the way you do that, not the, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about this other thing. It was a dumb lie. I don't
yeah,
believe it. It was a bad move. All right.
yep, I agree.
Last name on here. I was going to put Katie Porter on the list because I love her, but the word is that Katie Porter is getting ready to possibly run for Gavin Newsom's spot as governor. So the name that I put last on here is Gavin Newsom.
So here's the thing with Gavin Newsom. I was on an off the record Zoom with him before he launched the podcast, along with a few other online creators. And this was before I had any idea what would be in the podcast. And then I saw the Charlie Kirk episode, and personally, I thought it was pretty disastrous. And then I sort of stepped back a little bit and I started thinking, if the idea of this whole thing is to position himself for 2028, what's his real liability? The liability is that he is seen as representative of the furthest left insanity that the right loves to rail against, even though it's obviously not true. He's a completely, he's obviously not far left. In that context, is there value to what he's doing in trying to frame himself up as a moderate? Maybe, but I don't think it's working. Was sort of my takeaway. So, a year ago, I said, I think this guy is awesome in the sense that he has the right tone for how to talk to these people. I think he is using the kind of ruthless, get the hell out of my face sort of approach that a lot of the right wingers use. And I thought that's great. Right now, I don't know exactly what needle he's trying to thread, and I'm just not sure what the perception of him will be 6 months from now.
Yeah, I felt very much the same way. As a matter of fact, I love Gavin Newsom, and when it was clear that Biden needed to get the fuck out of there, it was like, okay, we're going to end up with Kamala Harris, but we could dragoon, Newsom into running, and I would have been potentially in favor of that. I stuck with Biden just about absolutely as long as I could because strategically, I think Kamala Harris made some mistakes, but she did remarkable considering what she was handed at that late time and getting Tim Walz in. There was lots of excitement. There were so many people who were convinced they were going to win. I actually predicted they would lose, but it was one of the saddest things I ever said. And it was very, very sad that I was wrong, or sad that I turned out to be right. By the way, somebody in chat had mentioned that my response for Jasmine was too wordy. You're correct. That's the long answer you give when the reporter's talking to you. The answer that Jasmine should give as the immediate soundbite is, yeah, I said it. What's wrong with Hot Wheels? And that spins it back around to where you have to explain exactly what the problem is. Oh, boom, boom, boom. It's a soundbite. Don't you like Hot Wheels? I like Hot Wheels. Anything like that shifts it. And from a strategic standpoint, gets the narrative moving in a slightly different direction. Don't get me wrong. She's not going to suffer very much for the comment. She'll probably suffer more for the dissembling that she did in trying to explain it. But there's so much going on. Every day is a new panic. Every day is a new breaking news. And they're all forgotten about. Let's see, I don't want to put you under fire there, but I don't want to reveal any hidden sources, but how many news sources are you going to every day on a regular basis to gather the information to help you put together the shows?
Oh, few dozen.
Yeah.
I'm not going through everything published by 24 different news outlets, right? I mean, right. I'm using a combination of strategic newsletters and roundups and a curated list of people I follow to create kind of a shorthand for it.
I was going to ask, so I recently went ahead and, based on all the advertising that they're doing and everything else, I went ahead and subscribed to Ground News, and I've really liked it. They're not a sponsor of this show. There is no sponsor of this show, but Ground News, you can call me and we can talk about it. But news aggregators like that, it's the only one I've seen or that I'm aware of that I pay attention to that does what they do to say, hey, here's a blind spot for you, and here's a potential blind spot for somebody else. That's been helpful because when I end up talking to somebody who vehemently disagrees with me, I tend to have a better idea of which bits of information they haven't heard about. And that really helps steer the conversation in a different direction. In these discussions, obviously, I'm undeniably a hothead in religious discussions as soon as somebody starts lying. There's no two ways about that. In political discussions, that can, just like religious discussions, that can go one of two different ways. You can just completely turn somebody off and everybody else who's watching you turn off. Arden was telling me about ideas related to, can you turn anything into a positive? Can you say, oh, yes, that's broken, but here's the better way? Even voting for Kamala improved my golf swing. Anything that I'm not saying that we should lie and be selling the copper wristbands that'll, win you the lottery and cure your stuff. But do you find that finding a positive goal to point people to is more or less effective than pointing out the problems in the current?
Well, I think you do both together. And full disclosure, Ground News is a sponsor of mine, so I just won't weigh in on them because obviously I would be very biased, Fair. I'm sure, if I gave any opinion about Ground News. I think that you do both together, which is to say, you identify a problem and you talk about the better way to organize a system, and hopefully you can provide some suggestions as to how to get there. The problem, as I outline it in the book, is twofold. It's one, people don't agree as to what the facts are anymore. People don't always agree as to what facts are. And what I mean by that is people are terrible at distinguishing between statements of opinion and statements of fact, like in a scary way. It's terrifying, actually, how bad people are at that. But then also, there's not really agreement as to the problem to solve. So even if I think most people would agree there are problems with our healthcare system. But depending on your politics, you might say, yeah, the problem is there's too much government involvement. We got to get the government out of healthcare and leave it exclusively to the free market. Well, if that's the problem you're trying to solve, it's going to be hard to work on that with someone who says, well, the problem is a lot of people can't afford it. A lot of people don't have it. The quality of it for many people isn't good enough. and life expectancy in poor areas is declining. Right? So
Right.
it's yes, it's great to say here's the good thing or the thing to point to, but at the same time, we have such a disconnect in terms of what the facts are and what the problem is we're even trying to solve, that you've got to first deal with that.
Last thing before we start taking calls here. I recently watched Sam Cedar go one against a whole bunch on Jubilee. I didn't watch it all, but I watched good chunks of it. And I pretty much despise Jubilee, and I'm not particularly fond of that format, but it's working and it's drawing attention and people are getting in there. And so cool, you play the game. Sam was having to talk with someone about Social Security, made a bunch of great points, and corrected a bunch of misinformation, which on the individual he was talking to clearly was not having much of an impact at all. And at one point, the guy that he was talking to was saying, look, don't you think we should just be teaching kids to save? And Sam did a strategic thing there that, agreed with him, but then moved it back to what he was talking about on Social Security. And I was sitting here in my chair going, the only right answer is yes, but that doesn't work. Because people who are 16 to 25 are likely barely making ends meet. They are in entry-level jobs. They are going to college. They're going to university. They're building debt. The notion that you could just say, hey, just save up, you never know what's going to happen, is bizarrely disconnected from reality. Plus, everybody in the United States is one illness away from bankruptcy. Potentially, everybody could lose everything at any moment other than maybe Elon. It seems to me there were lots of things that weren't drilled into me as a kid, and trying to drill in this notion of saving because you may not get Social Security. Sure, you could do that. And you know what? If you save and you turns out you don't need Social Security, great. You helped out somebody who didn't have the privilege you had, who wasn't, who had a potentially rougher life, who dealt with things that you didn't have to deal with. And I just felt like that was don't get me wrong, I thought Sam did great, but I felt like that was the one opportunity where I was sitting there going, no, you got to say that. What good does it do? That's like telling kids don't get sick or brush your teeth. You're going to need them when you're old. It happens or it doesn't. It's really hard to instill that.
It's just kind of a fantasy, right? I mean, it's like saying just teach people to save and get rid of Social Security is like saying just make sure everybody has a fire extinguisher and you can get rid of the fire department. And it kind of ignores reality. And it ignores the trajectory of wages for the last 40 years. It ignores a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it really does. This is a call-in show, as all of you know. We got a bunch of callers queued up. We are going to have at 6:43 right now. We're going to have about 45 minutes to go through as many calls as we can. Couple things to note. First of all, there's a delay on the phone system, and there's actually a delay between me and David as well. Please just leave a little space, leave a little air. I will use the mute button judiciously to make sure that we're not talking over each other. If you've got questions specifically for David, those are the ones I'd like to take first as well, because he's the guest here and I get to talk as much as I fucking want every week on this show. So we will get those calls going. And at 7:30, we're going to stop and do some super chats then. First caller for today, D is from Iowa, pronouns they, them. D's an Air Force veteran and they served during the Cold War, says future operations at risk when liars run the government. We're all at risk. Hey, D, what's going on? Are you there, D? You may have to tap your phone and then tap the web browser to wake it up. Okay, we'll move on a little bit here. Addie is in Ohio, pronouns she, they. Addie's an atheist who says the second civil war has started, and this time the result will be autocracy. How you doing, Addie?
Okay, we're having an issue. You guys vamp for like 5 minutes. I think I know what to do, so.
Okay. I'm going to put that person back in the queue. In that case, let's do this. David, tell us about the new book, where they can get it, and some of the specific things that you're trying to focus on in this book.
Yeah, really, three things. The book's available everywhere books are available: audiobook, ebook, hardcover, etc. Basically, three things. One, there's a little bit of a history lesson that just explains how Trump is really like a consequence. He is not the catalyst for. He's actually really the result of a process that I date back to the end of the 50s, the start of the civil rights movement, and opposition to racial integration. That opposition became what eventually turned into support for Reagan. We go through Gingrich taking control of the House of Representatives in 94, Bush and the further kind of de-intellectualizing as a feature of Republican politics. We, of course, then look at opposition to Obama, and Trump really just as the figure that coalesced.
Audio recording is on.
Did you hear that?
I did. Audio.
Sorry, that was the call-in system turning back on. My apologies.
Okay. So
at least we can hear it.
That was so that's the we talk about that historical story. I also go through examples from around the world of where social democracy, which is kind of my set of beliefs as neatly as they can be summed up in one phrase, has worked, and how other countries have figured out ways to solve a lot of the problems we've not yet solved in the US. And then thirdly, for the most part, I place the blame on a lot of this on something that you've really got to fix when people are way younger, which is the lack of media literacy and critical thinking in this country. And when someone's 45 and lacks these skills, it's very tough to really turn it around. And so we really need to be teaching these skills. These are non-political skills. They probably have a political impact, but these are apolitical skills when kids are 8 or 10 and really it's not happening, and it's not happening by design in a lot of the country.
Are we ready, Ard?
Yes, we should be good now. Give it a shot.
Let's try it again with Addie from Ohio. How you doing, Addie? You're on with David Pacman and myself.
Hey, how are you guys doing? I'm existing in existential dread daily.
I'm right there with you. What room number are you in the existential dread hotel?
I think maybe sharing room 666 with a bunch of my other queer friends.
Nice. So you think the Civil War has already started, but I'm assuming that you have to mean metaphorically, since we've seen nothing, actually. So what are you talking about?
Yeah, I think definitionally, no, the Civil War has not started. But when I think about history, it's always, how do you pinpoint when the war actually started? Because there's always this lead up. And I really feel like we're in that lead up to an America that is going to, I don't know what the warfare will look like. I don't think it'll be like anything we've ever seen. But I do think that on the other side of the conflict, I really don't see democracy winning.
Well, I hope you're wrong, but since we've got David here,
here's my thought.
Yeah, is democracy have hope? Or are they going to make it so we just don't vote? I don't think that's the case. I don't want to poison your answer. I'm here on behalf of some people who might be saying things that need to be addressed by someone who knows more than I do.
My thought is the following. If we end up in a civil war, it won't be because the left wants a civil war. It'll be because Trump and his movement are the ones actively fantasizing about one. They talk about Second Amendment solutions, cleansing the country, and using the military on civilians. That's all extraordinarily threatening stuff that if anything's going to precipitate such a civil war, it would be that. So I think I'm not out here predicting a civil war, but what I do think is that if we ended up in a situation that is like one, it would not be because people on the left are looking for one.
I agree with you. And I think, unfortunately, when the left or the center of America finally gets its act together and decides to go protest, or I think, what was it? Has it been a decade since a right-leaning movement took over like a national forest station for a few days or whatever, in a armed standoff. Like if the left were to do that with like, I don't know, Department of Education, Tesla dealership, who knows? If the left were to try anything like that, I think that is all the justification that this now extremely radicalized, religious radicalized American right would need to shut down democracy. And whether our allies got involved or not, I don't think America's so massive. I don't think it would be enough to result in democracy winning over autocracy.
So, I don't know. When I think about it, I'm expecting, with fairly strong likelihood, some localized implementation of martial law at some point based on civil unrest. I don't know if that gets to the extent of like having martial law at a national level, but it's within the realm of plausibility for me to think that, you know what, I could see in 4 years, 4 years, where we have curfews at different times and changes in policies that really curtail our freedoms. Am I out there on a limb? And if I am, say it, because I'm in a spot where I'm more panicked than some other people because of what I do, what I say, how I do it, who my partner is, and I laughed at and mocked people who told me what they thought was going to happen. And I think it was partially justified because in any rational world, what we're seeing now, it's absurd. Like genuinely, I just can't believe it.
I think if you go backwards, right, in these first 2 months, a lot of crazy stuff has already happened. What's more likely, that the crazy stuff stops or it continues? I think it's more likely that it continues. Yeah. If it does, is it likely that at some point, at least in a localized way, there will be some form of unrest? Yes, I think that is likely if the first premise is true, which is this is going to continue. And do we currently have a Trump administration that would love to send in the troops, even if it's at a city level? Yes, we do. So, I mean, I don't think that's crazy. And that seems like it seems almost like a conservative prediction in a way.
Yeah. Addie, I appreciate the call and your thoughts on this. I got to move on to a couple other callers. I can't say whether you're right or wrong, but I do share your concerns.
No, thank you guys so much. And yeah, you're right. Hopefully we're wrong. Thank you.
I've never wanted to be wrong more frequently than I have been over the last 10 years. It's a bit of a shock. Let's throw a little distraction here before we get to another political caller. Wig is a theist from Missouri, pronouns are he, him, who says the Bible can be used as evidence to prove the Bible. Wig, you're on with Matt and David Pacman. How does that work, to use the Bible to prove the Bible?
Great question. I do appreciate y'all letting me on. Well, it's very simple. Which came first, science or the scientific method?
Well, science is the Greek word for knowledge. So in some contexts, science came first, but the scientific methods, which there are many of them, have been refined over a long time and are constantly being improved. So the basic ideas behind science existed before we had a method to sort them out.
Great. So you're saying that the scientific method was written down. Is that correct?
No, there is no the scientific method. There are scientific methods, and what they are repeatedly improved best practices for evaluating available evidence and data to reach a conclusion. Science is constantly evolving and changing and improving, as are its methods.
Right, but how is that change being rendered? Like, is it not written down? Or, I guess what I'm saying is, what book cannot be used as evidence besides the Bible?
Oh, this isn't about whether or not a book can be evidence. No book is evidence. It's the data in books that are the things that we would use to evaluate. It's no book is a testament unto itself to verify the reliability of its data, not a science book or a Bible.
So then how can the Bible not be used as evidence to prove the data in there? You said that it's a circular argument, but you're saying that it's a circular argument, but I mean, there's really no way to not prove it without the book unless you're doing the scientific method yourself. You just can't say that the Bible can't be proven. Go ahead.
Wig. So first of all, I don't think I mentioned circular argument today at all, but congrats on recognizing that there is a circular argument fallacy. What I said was that science is a process that's constantly improving, and the methods are built, and no science book in any way confirms that what that science book says is true. It is the data and the evaluation of those data that confirm whether or not the information in that book is true. So not a biology book does not prove that the statements in the biology book are true, and the Bible doesn't prove that the statements in the Bible are true. That there has to be independent confirmation.
So that's kind of like putting the cart before the horse, though. And no,
Can
you
I
did
ask a
not say
question,
that. Sure,
Absolutely. David's got a question for you.
I'm not a professional at this. I'm just, I'm just trying to make sense of the world. Isn't this sort of like saying Spider-Man's real because the Spider-Man comic says so? Nobody would accept that argument, right? I mean, is that not ultimately sort of what we're talking about here? You would need something from outside the Spider-Man book to tell us Spider-Man is or isn't real?
Great question. This is the thing about that. Like, that argument is kind of elementary to me.
Really?
The thing is because you got to look at, the thing is the scientific method is the scientific method, but when we're dealing with history and how to prove history, it's not a scientific method. If you look at the Bible, okay, of course the Bible is not how it was started. It had other resources that we use to actually develop it, just like the scientific method does to build upon the scientific method. You can't say that you can use the scientific method and use those information in those books, but the Bible believers can't. Like that, it's putting the cart before the horse. Our belief is based on the Bible first. Once we find out that it's something in the Bible that needs to be looked at, then we can go outside the source. You can't say that, okay, well, I can see something on the outside source and then come into the Bible. Go ahead.
Wig, if you start with the Bible, aren't you setting up a position where you believe something and now you're expecting somebody to prove that it's false?
You said I'm setting it up for them to prove that it's false?
You're saying you begin with the Bible first, right?
Okay.
Is that what you said?
I did.
Okay. And so you believe the claims in the Bible right off the bat, right?
That's not the argument. The argument is not about belief. You're moving the goalposts. I'm not talking about my belief. I'm talking about
Wig. I swear, I'm completely unimpressed with you moving the goalpost and all this other stuff. I didn't move a goalpost. I asked a question because you sat here and said we begin with the Bible and then we go outside of it to find stuff. I'm trying to get down to specifics. Name a claim the Bible makes.
Right.
Give me a claim that the Bible makes that you believe just because the Bible says so.
There is no claim that I said it because of the Bible says so. No.
Thank you.
But that's the thing.
Then the Bible, Wig, what you're saying is the claim of the Bible is insufficient on its own to confirm that it is believable and true, right?
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I
know.
said.
I know those aren't the words you said. I'm pointing out the natural understanding of what you said, because if there's a claim in the Bible, You either believe it automatically or you find external confirmation for it. Those are the only two options to
Okay.
belief, right?
Okay, great. Okay, let me answer your
Correct.
question then. Miracles.
Hang on. My question here is yes or no. I'm building to something. So those are the only two options. There's a claim in the Bible. You either believe it automatically or you seek some sort of confirmation for it and then believe it, right?
That could be the method. I see where you're getting at. Okay, but yes.
It's not a method. This is a really, see, Wig, this is a really simple yes or no. Those are the only two options if you're going to believe it. You either believe it without additional information, or you believe it with additional information, or you just don't believe it. Those are the three options, right?
Yeah, but then if you believe it without information, then it's blind.
Wig, as I explained, I'm leading to something. Let me get there. Let me get there.
I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I've been dealing with atheism for a long time. You're trying to box me.
Yes, I'm trying to actually debate. Oh, thank you for the go ahead. Here, I'm going to put you on mute, and I'll take you off mute when I'm done talking this time. If you say that there's a claim in the Bible, and there are three options, you either believe it without additional information, or you believe it with additional information, or you do not believe it. If those are the three options, and you already said that you would not believe it without additional information, then you have already admitted that the Bible's claim on its own is insufficient to warrant belief, and therefore the Bible's claim needs external support. Tell me what I've said that isn't true.
Great. I'm glad you broke that down. Now, let me backtrack. You asked the question about. I want you to tell
me what I said that wasn't true.
What's not true is you can believe. I'm telling you, I'm retracting that. You can believe something without the evidence. The one thing that
I'm going to mute you again for a second here, Wig, because I want to make sure we're clear. I'm going to unmute you. What you're saying is you are now retracting your former statement, and you're saying that one can and should believe just based on what the Bible says, correct? Is that correct? I guess Wig doesn't want to talk anymore.
No, that's part of your statement on the end, not the correct part.
You previously said that you wouldn't believe things from the Bible without external. And when I pointed out the flaw in that thinking, you then you are now retracting that and saying that you would believe things without external confirmation, correct?
Correct. The miracles. Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to let David jump in here. David, Wig says that he would believe things in the Bible without external confirmation if they're miracles. Have you got thoughts on that?
Well, I guess what I would want to know then is how did he categorize the Bible as the one that he can believe without external confirmation? And would he apply that same standard to the Quran and the Book of Mormon and Harry Potter or Dianetics from L. Ron Hubbard? Like somehow I'm wondering whether he also would believe those without external confirmation, or whether something about just the Bible has put it in this category for him.
Great question. Well, the thing is this: when it comes to the other sources, everything is, you could say, subjective. But when it comes to history, you can't be subjective with it. Historically, the Bible is true. You can't go around that.
How do you know that the Bible is historically true? Was the Garden of Eden real? Was the flood real?
Well, was marsupial real?
I'm sorry. Those questions are irrelevant. Those questions are an irrelevant dodge.
Come on,
Wig. Those questions are an irrelevant dodge to what I asked you. I asked you if the Garden of Eden was real and if the flood was true. And you refuse to answer that. Do you have an answer?
Both of them are real. Both of them are real, yes.
How do you know?
How do I know?
Yes.
I believe those.
Yeah, I don't care what you believe. I asked how you know that they're real. I know you believe them. I used to
Well,
believe them too. I believed them. I believed them when I was studying to be a preacher, and then I learned that they're not real, and that nobody has a good reason to believe they're real. But you're telling me that they're real, and I'm asking you, how do you know? And you are dodging and twisting and turning like crazy.
Well, there's all kind of historical writings that of all type of civilizations that even actually wrote about the flood account. It's not just the Bible that came with the flood account. So you guys, come
that's
on,
a
man.
lie. That's a lie. There are no
Oh,
written historical record. There are no written historical records confirming a global flood, and it's not scientifically possible.
Is not.
The Epic of Gilgamesh is not a global flood, and it is not stated as something that actually is true. The global flood cannot occur
as a flood. There's a lot of
I've lived through
there's a lot of mythology in everything.
Wig, we're stopping right here, Wig, because I have other guests waiting to call in, and you're now asserting that things are true and a matter of historical record when they are absolutely not and cannot be. As the flood of Nova, as the flood purported of Nova, we already know at the time that it would have happened, the Egyptians didn't seem to notice it, which is why there are Christians and Jews who don't think it was a global flood, but think it was a local flood that's been misunderstood. You are running around claiming that there are historical accounts of things, and that is simply not true. But even if there was a historical record of a flood, a global flood, that would not prove that the flood happened, and it would not prove that any of the other claims of the Bible was true. Because if I say, David's the smartest guy I know, Wig is the smartest guy I know, one of those two things is definitely not true. They both might be false, but one of those things is definitely not true because they're in conflict. I'll give you the last word, Wig, but if you're just going to say that I can guarantee you have zero expertise in history and zero knowledge of what is a matter of historical record, but I'm not knocking you for that. You are like every other theist that calls in to defend this. You have been grossly misinformed about the facts. But what would you like to say to wrap it up?
Well, number one, thank you. I do appreciate you for taking my call. Number two, yeah, I'll call in. We'll talk again, Matt. I'll concede it. Go ahead. Thank you.
Catch you later, Wig. And
I don't know how you do this, Matt. I don't know how you do this.
Oh, that's incredible. That was a nothing. That was a simple little thing. Wait until there will be other callers. And as a joke, somebody's going to take this. I don't care. I've been told that I need to be kinder. And so instead of telling people to fuck off, I should say, how can I best help you to fuck off? And so, I had a lot of fun with that joke. All right. Here's Matthew, is an atheist from California, says we have to do something different. Matthew, you're on with David Pacman. What's going on?
Hi, Matthew. Hi, Pacman. Love you guys both. I called in and talked to you when the election was going on and made my argument for voting third party. And partially as a result of that, I decided not to. Ended up voting for Harris. But I'm angry, and I've been angry for some time, honestly. I mean, so many lines have been crossed. There was a full-on coup attempt in 2020. It's 2025. It just seems to me that accountability isn't going to happen. And I want to be a practical, optimistic person, but I don't know what we can do. And I'm hoping you have answers. How do we make accountability happen?
Yeah.
Just
David,
in general.
how do we hold people accountable? Yeah. I mean, we tried people for January 6th and Trump just pardons them. How do we start holding people accountable when we don't have any power? Or very little power?
I think in this case, you have no choice but to start at the local level and start everywhere that there are elections. I mean, okay, Trump's going to be here for 4 years unless there's some kind of health thing. Fine. But there's elections in 2026. There's off-year elections right now. You can run for local school board. You can run for city council. I mean, I think there's a for me, voting in federal elections every 2 or 4 years is really just the starting point. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make, which cedes ground to the Republicans who know this because they're the ones out there running for the school board and all of the stuff. The biggest mistake we can make is to think there's nothing to work on until the next federal election. And so we should be taking over the school boards and the city councilors and running for mayor and all of these different things. And it requires a level of organization that's maybe lacking a little bit. We don't have the Turning Point USA infrastructure that Charlie Kirk and the right have developed. Fine. We may not have the media ecosystem right now, but this is all the stuff to work on. So I don't know if the question is what can we do, but if we just wait 4 years and vote in federal elections, that's not going to work to hold anybody accountable. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, but I'm also worried about what's happening at the local level. You mentioned school boards. I teach high school at a fairly progressive part of the country. It's progressive for California. And even where I am, I've noticed increasing normalcy of things that didn't used to be normal. People referring to each other in disrespectful ways or are using slurs. And the kids too, you hear this stuff from, and it's become noticeably more of a problem over the last 8 or so years. I'm not that old of a person, and I feel like in my lifetime, I've started to see things that were moving in a positive direction, at least in the recent term, kind of moving the other direction. I mean, the title of your stream here is "Have Christian Nationalists Already Won?" Well, I mean, they haven't turned this country into a theocracy, but I feel like they've succeeded in normalizing things that are really alarming. And it's happening at both the national and the local level. I'm really frustrated and concerned, and I don't think I could say a practical thing that I could easily do to help move that needle the other way.
Yeah, when I think about things like, have Christian nationalists already won? Have the architects of Project 2025 won? It's not a matter of have they won in a sense of job done, mission accomplished. No, it's more in the sense of I'm looking here and there's a huge rock up on the hill. And we've been holding it at bay for ages. And now there's 100 people walking up to that rock right now, and their hands are on it, and they're starting to push it. They're starting to rock it. And at what point do we reach a tipping point? And I guess this is mostly for David, since Matthew are both asking. I mean, at what point do we reach a tipping point where it's like, oh yeah, we've survived longer than any other country or nation like ours, but it's reboot. At some point there's a reset or serious change, revolution. At what point do we say, hey, we can't fix this without like changes that we have no way of implementing, and so we need to start over?
I'm not an accelerationist, which is sort of what you're alluding to. I have a whole chapter in the book, in fact, and here's my view on this. If I look at American history and ask myself, what are the periods where we've seen the most positive change from my political perspective? It's the progressive era, the New Deal era, and the civil rights era. And did you hear that?
I did hear something.
This is quite a show with the I love the extraneous noises, because I don't know if that was on my end, but if you heard it, it must not be. So those three eras all were built on some Supreme Court justices that were previously nominated based on a president that previously won, who nominated those justices when the Senate balance was in the favor of the president. So the point here is, when I look at American history, I don't see evidence that accelerationism and breaking it all down to build it back up has ever achieved what we wanted. And I see lots of evidence that incrementalism has worked. It's boring. I know incrementalism is more boring. The other caution is there's the assumption that when you do break it all down, because things have gotten so bad, that you or the people you would like to see in power will be the ones that seize power after it's all broken down. There's no guarantee of that. We've seen around the world that it often ends up being someone even worse. So I try to really take out my opinion and just look at what history tells us.
So it
Yeah,
sounds like we need to pay attention, vote, and run for office. And we may need to fill more city councils and local government positions with more reasonable people, more left-leaning people. Matthew, your dogs are barking, bro.
I have to ask, is Matthew
yeah,
typing or is that a bird?
Hold on. That is my neighbors. I am going to close the window.
That's all right, because you're also typing. And I've got 3 more calls I've got to get to in the next few minutes. So I think we've given you about the best answer we're likely to be able to give you today.
Yep.
But I appreciate the call, and thanks for hanging out with us and giving us stuff to think about. I got 3 more calls. This one's another theist call that I suspect will be fairly quick, and that's Cosmos is calling with Denmark about Neoplatonism. Hey, Cosmos, how you doing? You may have to tap your phone and then tap the browser to wake your phone up. You're on the web client. Hello. Okay. Going once. Going twice. Sold. Cosmos, if you see this, my nutshell on Neoplatonism is it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how there can be a the one that is beyond being or not being. And you use that as a foundation. I don't know how it got you to Christianity. I would be interested in talking about it. Call me back on the Sunday show where we do more on religion anyway. Razor has been on hold, pronouns he, they from California for almost an hour. Razor says, as a young black person, the fact that the right constantly uses woke as an insult when the black community coined it. What can we do to take back our words and use them again in solidarity? Hey, Razor, how are you? All things considered.
I am surviving. I have put myself on news hiatus. I literally taken like maybe 2 articles a day, and I make sure that at least one of them is positive. David Pacman is definitely one of the few that I look at, and also I forget his name. It's another. I keep seeing his shorts, but certain names, I forget. Very famous. That's the point.
He does something in shorts. Oh, he does short videos. I thought you were saying he wears shorts, and I was like, who do you see?
No.
I don't ever wear pants.
No, he does.
How do you know what we're wearing?
No, he does little YouTube shorts that just give quick, like, hey, breaking news. Trump machine does this and stuff.
Is that Aaron Parnas that you're talking about?
I don't think so. I think his name starts with a J.
Okay. Well, so Razor,
but
I have a curious way to kind of spin your question. I kind of want to find out what David thinks, and that's there are often labels that get turned into slurs, and we pick them up and take them back.
Yeah.
And woke is particularly. You're right. It's in part targeted because this started with the black community, but I'm wondering whether it's worth the effort to pick up some of the words again and maybe not blaze forward with a different label for essentially the same thing that I don't know. David, how do we you've got thoughts on that?
On the use of woke as a slur. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. May I give a small little understanding of what I think about with this real fast?
Please.
Okay, so obviously, like, it's been my biggest hang up for like months because whenever I hear it, it's always a thinly veiled N-word, R slur, or F slur. That's always how I hear it. Even whenever the theists or nationalists call into the show here, and they'll say, oh, you guys are one of them wokies. And I just like, that's very close to a small trigger warning, as if they're small trigger warning on this one. It's like they're saying darkies back during slavery times. And that's what I hear. That's what I hear. And the issue that I always have. the issue that I always end up having whenever I hear it, it's not that I'm actually triggered by it, because I understand that they're just ignorant people who don't know what they're saying, but I can feel what they're meaning, or where they got it from, and the people they got it from, what they meant, even if the person who's using it is not meaning it like that. So,
well, two quick things, Razor. One, there's a little bit of audio peaking, so if you just can move the phone to the mic just slightly further away from your face, it's not happening all the time, just on occasion. Thanks for calling in to, ostensibly a couple of white dudes to ask this question, but
I'm
David,
Hispanic, actually.
Oh, no,
so I can vouch.
True. White passing.
So understand, I'm mixed. So I'm half black, half white. I'm best of both worlds. Yay.
My thinking on this, Razor, is when I hear a lot of the most transphobic comments are actually an obvious spin rooted in homophobia and a misunderstanding about gender. It's why I have a mug that says "You're gay, homie," because people were like, "Oh, you're gay," as if it would bother me. But on this front, I mean, I interrupted because I want to get David's thoughts on this anyway. So, David, we need
my thought.
Words and labels.
The right turned. So I say this as someone who has been critical of what I see as some of the excesses of the social left sometimes, and like dying on hills we don't need to be dying on. So with that caveat, basically the right turned woke into a slur because they don't like things that challenge systemic inequalities, racism, sexism, etc. So basically they now use it as a slur to smear basic decency. And oftentimes they also are, there's something they would really love to be able to say that they don't feel like they can because of wokeness, right? And so it's like, okay, well, what is it that they really want to say that they think they can't? It's usually pretty horrible. So with all that being said, I think it's fine to use a different term. I don't feel the need to really try to like take woke back. I think we don't surrender the values. The trap would be surrendering the values, but the linguistic part of it, of trying to take the word back, I don't have a super strong feeling or like need to try to do it personally.
I would say, and this was going to be part what I was going to say a little bit more so before Matt has done about. So the thing, like, I love watching live. I now keep track of my busy days, by understanding what shows are on for the day. Good work, Jimmy. The one thing that frustrates me is whenever someone does call in and use that as a slur, like trying to say like, "Oh, you guys are the wokies," or "You guys are woke," or stuff like that. Instead of it, like the line that's usually said, and I hear Forrest, Matt, Arden, all them. I hear it. I hear the question, "What do you mean by woke?" Because I understand you're just trying to make it to where they will. You're trying to make it to where they stumble. They'll end up stumbling and like, "What? Do you know what I mean?" I always feel like that's giving the word to them whenever you ask them what do they mean when they say it, instead of just being straightforward, looking them in the eye, or not in the eye, obviously on the phone. Just like answering back to them. If you're gonna say the N word, just say the N word, or it's just be straightforward with them. Like I really, so I can ban you, kind of thing. Because I legitimately hate hearing. I
can't and won't do it. I can't and won't do it, Razor, and I can't advocate it for it, because that may in fact be what's going through their mind. But if you pretend like you can read their mind and you are at all wrong, they get to dismiss everything you say because you seem reactionary and willing to project upon them things that may or may not be true. By example, when we used to talk about people who are anti-choice, my former wife, hi Beth, still sorry, would look at them and say, these people, they just want to punish women for having sex. They want to control women's biology. They want to blah, blah, blah. And that may be true, but the second you say it, you have now told them what you think about them. And if you're right, cool. They may flounder or whatever else. But in my case, when I was anti-choice, it had nothing to do with that, because the propaganda that was in my head, both from religion and politics, was I was there to protect the unborn. It wasn't about punishing anybody. It was a noble position. And if somebody came up to me and basically, and this is why this backfired, I think people don't understand the difference between systemic racism and the let's put a hood on and burn a cross KKK style racism. And so when people were being called racist for the things that they were doing, even though what they were doing was absolutely racist, when we sum up the entirety of somebody's character by saying you are a racist, we've made an error that allows them to dismiss things. And so I don't try to tell people what they're thinking unless I can really prove. Like when I said that the members, that the Trump officials during the testimony were lying today, I think any reasonable person could make a case that when they were asked a question of
easily.
Should something like this be classified, and they're like, I don't know, that's bullshit. These people, they would have given the exact opposite answer if we were talking, if there were Democrats and they were on the council or on the committee.
Just one other thought. My approach might be when you're asked, "Are you woke? Are you one of those wokies?" Is to go, "Tell me what you're really asking me. There must be something you want to know about my beliefs. Tell me what you're really asking me by asking me that question." And then, if it's about race or whatever, maybe it'll be exposed. But I think it's a less. You're not, like Matt is saying, you're avoiding losing the credibility by just assuming that you're dealing with a racist or whatever. And I try to just go, I don't even know what you're really asking me. Tell me what you want to know.
Yeah. That's actually really great, Razor, because I've done that with other things where someone will make a joke, whether it's on social media or in person, that is predicated on a premise that ends up mocking someone who's disabled or someone who's part of a marginalized group or anything like that. Same way that they'd use like gay as that's gay, as if mocking it. And so I would say, I don't get it. What's funny? How I missed the joke. Can you explain it to me? And when you force them to explain the joke to you, watch how uncomfortable they get when they're explaining why they're taking pleasure in mocking a category of people who are marginalized. I think it's one of the best tactics. I wish I had used it much more, and I will use it much more. And it's one of the best ways to stand up and be allied with a group, is to make sure that when somebody's saying something against them that they think is funny, and it's just, the guy is just nudging, wow, did you see that? And they're mocking, women or whatever else. My thing is just to be, I don't get it. Why is that funny?
Yep.
And then watch their reaction.
Yeah, very simple.
At a minimum, you've made them think. At a minimum, you've made them think. Razor, I appreciate the call. I got to get moving. We're running short of time.
I love you all.
Thanks so much, Razor. We love you too.
Yeah, Razor.
And I don't know how this is going to work. So Nate's calling from South Carolina, but Nate, I've only got like a minute and a half, and you're calling in to talk about your master's thesis on mimetic perspective. I don't feel that we're probably going to have time to do it justice.
Yeah, probably not. So, as a matter of fact, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, since we don't have very much time, I had this other thought anyway, and it's more germane. So if you don't mind, can I just say this other thing?
You can have the last minute and a half.
I appreciate you. So regarding the very first call, whether or not democracy will survive, I think what's really important here is that whatever happens to our political system, it's going to be different, and it's going to have to match this emerging economic system that's coming out, which is techno-feudalism. And that's because politics and economics are entangled things. And like right now, Amazon is the market. The means of the production are becoming the labor. This whole paradigm is shifting, and we need we're going to end up with a political system that works in concert with something that isn't capitalism anymore, because it's dying. I'll call some other time to talk about.
If you've got a question for David, get it in now.
I applied, David. Do you want to hire me? Never mind. Check it out.
That's a question.
I really did, but hey.
Techno-feudalism is interesting, though. I mean, I think obviously, you got this handful of tech billionaires that own the platforms and they own the data, they own the AIs increasingly. It does start to get away from capitalism, no matter what version of capitalism you're talking about. It's more like a digital serfdom. It really isn't inevitable. I mean, one of the funny things is we have the legal infrastructure to break up monopolies. We just don't really use it. We have mechanisms to tax, a little bit sloppy sometimes, but the people and the corporations that are running a lot of this stuff. We certainly have the tools to regulate algorithmic power, but we're just not really doing it. So I think what the caller is bringing up is quite salient.
All right. Well, then we'll get Nate back some other time to explain what's going on. We've got a ton of super chats, and I'm going to try to make sure that we put the ones up that are specifically for David first, so that if he has to leave before we're done, we can do that. So normally what we do here, David, you can see the super chats, I'm assuming, is we alternate reading them. What I'll do is I'll have you start while I'm looking for any that are specifically addressed to you, and I'll get that one queued up next.
You just want me to read these that are up on the screen?
Yep. It'd be like $10 from Bobtail Trucker. Push that like button, please. Thank you there. And then this one, $10 Canadian from David Haxor. Hi, David Pacman. I have definitive proof for God. Tells the story about Little Red Riding Hood. Here's the proof of God. After a word from our sponsor, this text is paid for by this text. I don't get that
Nice.
one. All right.
That's hard to argue with that, right?
It is definitely hard to argue. This one, easy. I gave you an easy one.
$9.99 from LA Silver Surfers.
And $10 from Greg Markowski. Thanks again, Greg. Appreciate it.
$10 from Darth Erebus. My two favorite hosts together, so awesome. Thank you for everything you do and for helping to keep me sane in this fucked up timeline. My pleasure.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Darth. $10 from Ryan P. They are saying this may be the greatest concept of a call-in show lineup in the history of YouTube. I'm not sure, but we'll look into it strongly. I still want to know who they are because,
it's the woke generals.
It's the woke generals.
$14.99 from Samuel Stone. Unfortunately, Australia has a Trump copycat running for office. His party is called Trumpet of Patriots. Can you believe that shit? I don't even know if that's true. I really am not up to date on Australian politics.
Well, we have some fans and viewers from Australia, so I'm sure somebody will chime in at some point to let us know. $10 from Etienne Unsen. Not just the anime crossover we wanted, but the one we needed. Thanks to both of you for doing what you can do to make America actually great. The thing we didn't say is that I might have lied. It might be the case that we're not in the same place because of security reasons, and we're not allowed to be in the same building so that they don't take us both out at the same time, because then who would you guys watch?
$10 from Jessica Gallagher. It's so great to see you on here, David. Looking forward to reading your book. I would also love to see Kyle Kalinske as a guest host someday. And also hello to you, Matt. I'm a big fan of all you do. Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate you getting the book.
No promises on Kyle. I basically cut Kyle off a long time ago when he became kind of a Joe Rogan simp. But he's seems to have bounced back from that. And Kyle has a lot of stuff that I really like, but I don't know him almost at all. I think we had a conversation maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but I don't have any opposition to having more guests like that, including him. $50. Holy crap, from Bobtail Trucker. Thank you so much for the host, mod, staff, Arden, and Jimmy So. That's incredibly kind and generous, and we appreciate you.
$20 from Ryan P. Sirs, I really the work you each do. If you were betting men, David, I'm not sure if you are, would you be willing bet that anyone in administration faces any kind of accountability for Signalgate? If I were a betting man, which I'm not, I bet that there is maybe like one sacrificial resignation.
Yeah. I find it hard to disagree on that one. $10 from CGNOC71. We will never have true free elections in this country until if We eliminate all private money from elections and ban lobbying. Hail Bernie Sanders and AOC. Thanks for joining us, David.
Well said. $10 from Eric Lewine, Matt/David on the same show. Wow, huge fan of both of you. David, sir, I watched you daily before election. Now I just can't watch any news. Makes me sick. Still subscribe on YouTube and website. Any advice? Well, listen, here's what I do. When I'm done with my last show of the week, I completely tune out all news and politics until I have to start working on the Monday show. And I think strategically limiting your consumption is very healthy.
Great point. $10 from Ryan P. David, sir, I'd love to see you have Andrew Seidel on your show again in the future. Andrew will be back on here. We're going to try for April. I talked to him just the other day. He's genuinely, like, if not the best of us, one of the best of us for sure. And so it's nice to see that my friends and friendly acquaintances are working together all over the place and people appreciate it. So thank you so much, Ryan.
$10 from David Haxor. Zoidberg says your president is bad and you should feel bad or do something about it. Very nice.
That's fair. I'm not even a Zoidberg knowledge haver. $10 from PT Colin. Imagine spending $10 just to say Obama and I love Tesla.
I don't know if that's someone ragging on my membership program, because we have like a soundboard for our members where those two sound bites are there, but it's also only $7, and with a coupon code it's only $3.50. So like it's a much better deal than that.
See, and I just have a soundboard where I can do a rim shot or applause on occasion. I can't get the Tesla thing on there. This one's you, I think.
Oh, is it? Oh, $10 from Nathan Polyak. Congrats on the book, David. Just saw that Cenk fired Francesca from guest hosting on TYT. We need more left voices to coalesce, not strawman their peers while sharing beers with fascists. Agree, we need to coalesce. This is the first time hearing about this Cenk thing.
Weirdly, this one actually came up twice. Oh, wait. It's PT Colin did the last one, and Ryan P did it again. Imagine not spending $10 Obama, and I love to. There we go. It's not the same one twice.
Yeah.
You guys are having way more fun in the super chats than I was expecting. I will pay closer attention so that I don't do what happened last time.
Here's James Richards, $10. Abbott made millions on the accident that put him in a wheelchair and then put laws in place to favor the companies. So now it's impossible for someone to get the same payout that he did. I don't know if that's true, but I wouldn't put it past him.
I have no idea if it's true either. And, mocking a disability is just wrong. Recognizing it, because I'm pretty sure if you went back, while they don't always show his chair and footage in the same way they didn't with other people who were disabled in public office at different times, it's not like it's a hidden thing, and it's not like something that he seems embarrassed or bothered by. Jasmine, in proper political circles, nothing like that would have been said, and nothing like that would have needed to be said. But I think we've passed the when they go low, we go high phase, because I don't know that that's as effective. And so on occasion, you poke back. I don't think this was a smart poking back. As I mentioned before, I don't think her explanation of it was believable or good. But, what's sad is, well, I don't think she's going to face any real consequences other than maybe censure. That may be more than anybody faces over Signalgate. How wild is that? $20 from Milos. Sending again, since last time was less than 10, Matt. Can we get a soundbite for David's channel? What are your thoughts on the bonus show? I don't have thoughts on the bonus show. You caught me. I don't know what soundbite.
Could you maybe suggest that it could be illegal? I think that would help me.
Okay. I am somewhat convinced that the bonus show might be illegal. We should start an investigation. There we go.
Cool. $10 from Secular Humanist. 2 of my favorite guys online together. That's awesome. Glad to be here.
And I'm sure that this is something, could have happened a lot more. But in the early days, like when I went on David's show, I was focused almost entirely on religion and atheism and secular humanism and skepticism like that. And that's the bulk of what the interview was about. Politics were something that I, for the longest time, was largely disinterested in. And, long before that, I was a Rush Limbaugh ditto head. And now, our worlds are merging because I think you can't avoid it. All the people who are like, I don't like politics, I want to talk about politics. Name something that isn't politics that actually matters. If you want to talk MCU stuff, there was a jaw-dropping cast reveal today for Avengers Doomsday that I almost wish I would have avoided, but I'm glad I watched. We could talk about that sometime. But there's another Doomsday potentially coming.
This one, you or me?
I think it's me. Okay. $10 from Sherman Baby. Or Sherman Bay. So sorry there, Sherman Bay. Have we discarded Harris already? She has the experience in offices and as a candidate, the empathy and more. Isn't she a good candidate for 2028? My immediate answer is no.
My answer is no, and it's not personal. I met her last March, and she was awesome, and I thought this is someone who could be president and probably should be president. I just think with everything that happened and with how the campaign after the first 2 weeks were fine, but then it really wasn't run well. And I struggle to believe that the best path to the White House is through Kamala Harris in 2028. Just hard to believe.
Yeah. And as much as I love Tim Walz and would be supportive of him, I'm not sure that that's the best path either. Instead of focusing so much on who's going to run for 2028, and yes, I've been doing it too, we need to be focused on what needs to happen by 2026 to give us any kind of power or leverage for 2028. Excuse me, got hiccup all of a sudden.
$10 from Sintoki. Hey, Matt, I can't stay for the show, and I haven't caught your Twitch in a while, but I can't wait to watch this later. Please keep making great content.
Thanks so much, Sintoki. I have been busy. I haven't been on Twitch and played in 5 days because I traveled for a wedding and a funeral, and then Monday, as most of you know, is Rat Day. And we're preparing for the North American Reptile Breeders Conference this coming weekend. By the way, for everybody who's watching, who's in the Dallas area, who can get there, if you like reptiles and have an interest in reptiles and exotic pets and things like that, NARBC, the North American Reptile Breeder Convention in Dallas, will be next weekend. I will be there. Arden and I own Epic Loot Exotics. We keep and breed 17 species of snakes and 10 or 11 species of reptiles or lizards outside of snakes. And you didn't know this. I have a house full of
I generically knew. I know Arden mentioned, that you're involved with reptiles, but you're doing what now, Matt? You're breeding and selling them at shows.
Yeah. So see, if you'd have come to Austin, we were going to take you to dinner last night and then bring you over. Our house is a zoo. The living room is full of enclosures, and there are multiple rooms in the house that have racks of snakes and lizards and all kinds of stuff that we breed. I'm sure that as I click through these super chats, the lovely and talented producer might actually show up with a snake to show off, but we'll see. Maybe a new one.
And this is all legal in Texas?
Yes. There are snakes that are not legal to have. Like I can't have a Texas indigo without a permit because it's native. Yeah, we'll talk about it more later. I want to make sure we get through this stuff before you have to go. $10 from Where Lemur. Wow, that was difficult. Paw JD and Obama. We should have Jimmy here to do like a Trump impression because my Trump impression is non-existent.
$10 from Riggs. David, are you still a Zionist? And do you still say biological women when talking about cis and trans women? So on the second part, I don't know what I say. It's not a hot topic on my program, really. But anyone who knows me knows that I respect everybody. And if I ever use the wrong phrase, it's simply from, ignorance rather than malice. The whole "am I still a Zionist" thing, I am like 93% of American Jews. I think that calling for the destruction of Israel is wrong, and I'm against that. If that makes me a Zionist, then I don't know what it means anymore.
Who did we get? Oh my. We got a potentially spicy noodle here, although she's been really great.
She's fine.
This is one of our zebra jungle carpet pythons. They are native to Australia, and she is young and will be growing up and be one of our breeders for that project in the future. Her name's Nova, in part because on her head is a little round spot that really looks like a star going over. Thank you.
Have you ever taken a bite from one of these snakes?
Not from that one, and it's very rare that I get bit. Now, the hatchlings are very food motivated, so when you go to feed them, you have to be careful because it won't hurt. I mean, the cat has hurt me more than any reptile, and except for one bearded dragon that sliced my thumb open a little bit.
And this is a business or a hobby, Matt?
Well, I guess I better keep calling it a hobby until we make more money, but the plan is for it to actually be a proper business. We're an LLC, but we need to sell more before I can really consider it a business.
Got it.
All right. I think this one's yours.
$20 from Braden Erickson. Hi, I live in Eastern Ohio. Mormons and Republicans. I've noticed a lot of moderate Republicans have gained a more negative view of Trump and his recent policies. Do you see this turning into blue votes in 28? Thanks. No, I really don't. I mean, I think the moderate Republicans will have someone other than Trump to vote for. And also, a lot of them are in red states that are going to be red either way, maybe just by a little more or a little bit less. So right now, I don't think that disaffected Republicans are going to move the needle in 28.
And I don't think that's how you make blue voters either. I think you've got to get the people who are disinterested and who are actually legitimately upset that they have been misinformed or ill-informed and saw damage and harm come to someone or something that they care about, and get them motivated to vote for change. $10 from Weston Campbell. The word science comes from the Latin word scientia, which means knowledge. The missile knows where it is at all times. It knows this because it knows where it isn't. Fergalberger, Manergalberger, go fuck yourself, Jimmy. Yes, we have a number of code things that are going to be difficult for David to read unless he's been secretly watching every show we've done. So GFY is go fuck yourself, Jimmy, because Jimmy doesn't like to be told thank you. So that's people's way of saying thank you.
$10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Y'all Japanese people were around when the Noahic. Is that how you say that? Noahic? I've never seen that word.
It's very difficult to say, and I would thought a Jewish person would be better at it than I would, because my Hebrew is awful.
The Noahic flood supposedly happened. We ain't got a flood story, lots of wave stories, byproduct of having ample high ground. I suppose David is a fun guest. Glad to be here.
Our pleasure. $10 from Jeremy. Love you, Matt, and great to see you here, Pacman. Oh, you spelled here H-E-A-R, so you get to hear him here. Love your channel. That's all I got. Just thank you for what y'all do. Thank you for liking it.
$10 from the Raven 200. Matt, I love John Cena's heel run so far. WWE focusing on his character work is definitely the right idea. I can't wait for his first true promo battle with Cody Rhodes. WrestleMania is going to be lit. I have very little to say about John Cena. I don't watch wrestling, other than I recently found out that he went to college at Springfield College in Springfield, Massachusetts, very close to where I grew up.
Well, I haven't kept up with everything. I was a huge wrestling fan once upon a time. We have some wrestling fans here. Ken Anderson, who was Mr. Kennedy, is a friendly acquaintance of mine, if not a friend. We don't get to interact much, but Raven 200 is a big wrestling fan and throws those in. I haven't kept up with Cena's heel turn. I'm glad they're doing it well. I find it, without watching it, I find it kind of bizarre. But it was interesting enough that, I hope he has the greatest WrestleMania of his career. And, since it's going to be ending. $10 from Bastille. Question for both of you. How much hair gel do you use? Love you both as prime examples of critical thinking. David, how much hair gel do you use?
I use no gel. I use a product that is more of a it's really quite an ethereal substance. I don't even really know how to describe it, but it's certainly not a gel. I use a little bit of it.
Yeah, we already know I use more hair gel than anybody else. I just don't put it on my head. $20 from the Batman 1119. Seeing how a PA election went to the Dems by a big margin and how extreme Trump is doing things, there are theories that this may be the death of the Republican Party as we know it. Any thoughts to the validity of that? You know, I had those thoughts. As I was mentioning with David earlier, back in 2018, 2019, when there was conflict between the MAGA wing and the regular, I thought, oh, this is going to end the Republican Party. And when they lose to Biden, or when they lose in 2020, that, this is going to, the split the Republican Party, and it's going to take them, a decade or two before they have any hope of relevance. And instead, they did what we have to do. They coalesced, even though they had to hold their nose, because the other option was more repulsive for them.
My thought on the whole death is this finally the death of the Republican Party. At this point, it's just like, no, it's not. We've been through too many of these things. And also these off year and special elections at this point, they have really very little predictive value. $10 from David Haxer. Sir, I will die on whichever hill I chose. A little bit of mixed up tenses there.
Yeah. $10 from Melatonale. David, sir, with tears in my eyes, it's great to see you on the line. I just got my signed book plate today, still waiting on the book.
So about so here's what's going on. Amazon, this is only related to Amazon books. Everybody who ordered from everywhere else, this is not going on. I guess Amazon launched some kind of crazy spring thing yesterday, which is the day my book came out. And so even though they've had like 7,000 books for weeks now, and they promised everybody they would get them yesterday or today, now they had some kind of shipping delay. But it does look like it's cleared up, and everybody should have them very soon.
Well, we're optimistic, as I'm also on the list. Boom. $10 from Dr. Diff. Matt, did Beth also predict they would kill Social Security? Because I'm waiting for that shoe to drop. No. And I honestly don't think they will. I think that there are some strategy elements in scaring people into thinking that you're going to do something much worse than what you're actually going to do, so that it feels like a relief when they don't do the thing that they said they were going to do, or that you thought they were going to do. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with Social Security, but I have zero expertise. David, is it at risk right now, do you think, for real?
Well, listen, I don't think it's at risk that they will revise the benefit tables and tell everybody you're actually going to start getting less money now. But they've already laid off 12% of the staff, shut down a bunch of call centers, delayed new applications for Social Security disability as a result. So they are hurting it. I don't think they're killing it, but they're definitely hurting it.
Okay. We got a handful more of these to go and only a few minutes left with David here, but $10 from the Raven 200. Be sure to consensually bend that like button over and spank its thick booty. Jimmy, go take a leaping tombstone pile driver from David Pacman. Then a triple jump springboard moonsault by Matt Dillahunty. And Jimmy might like that too much.
$10 from Storm Chaser Noah. Had a Christian say there is a time and place for stoning the other day. Absolutely shocking. Oh, man. I don't know what to say about that. What was that?
Are you sure they weren't like a cannabis activist?
Oh.
$10 from Razor Sharp. Thank you again. Follow-up question. Any ideas for words or phrases to replace woke if we can't take it back?
I haven't thought of any. I just, I don't know that we need the term woke, which is like an umbrella term for a set of beliefs, maybe. I think like just talk about each issue and explain your position on each issue is really much more productive.
Yeah. When we come up with a soundbite that says, I want fewer marginalized people to die, I'll go with that one. $10 from Dan H. Bites. Wow, the guy with the famous bonus show is on. Good to have you on, David, sir. We need ranked choice voting now.
Thank you.
I'm at some point, I'd love to get you on to have a conversation about ranked choice voting, because I was in favor of it, then I was opposed to it, and then now I'm in favor of it again, because there are a number of different ways to do it, and some of them I think are potentially much, much, much worse. Do you cover
what
it?
opponents often say is they point to one where, based on which votes are tabulated in which round, and they give you this scenario where like the result can be totally opposite even the will, but that's been resolved as far I believe that single transferable vote is resolves that issue.
Okay.
$10 from Aliashana Silverbow. An Austrian, an artist, and a fascist walk into a bar. It went all Reich. Are anti-fascists Z's? Because everyone's telling me that fascists are not Z's. Fascists are the joke. Not too sure about this one.
I genuinely, I don't get it. Just paint me as the old guy that didn't pay attention to something he should have. Seymour Jackson sent a $9.99 super sticker. Hippo KO fist bump. And there's another one because Arden forwarded it as well. Number one fan. So very appreciative of all that.
$10 from Sky High Fly Guy. Just got home. We'll catch the show on rerun, but so stoked to see this show.
I was stoked to do it. Joshua Everett says, we're already seeing a lot of chatter on the right about either ignoring the results of the midterms or finding a way to cancel them that is palatable to SCOTUS. What comes at that point?
I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't suspect it's going to happen, but also when SCOTUS makes decisions, we're kind of just done. I mean, until we get Congress to potentially change laws, we're stuck because Trump's either going to abide by them or not. And, you know, he's immune if he breaks the law in some cases. So
$9.99 from Web Fiji. I have no hope for America, especially after Trump's reelection. What will happen when sane people like you two are gone? Who will keep us sane? There's already a whole next generation. So I think it's growing and it's building.
Yeah. $10 from Orange Laser. Great conversation today. Been watching both of you for a few years. Quite the team. Looking forward to the book, David. Congrats on 200K, Matt. Arden, you rock. That's a fact. Here's to the future. Oh, yeah. Eat the rich. We have right now 4 super chats left and 3 minutes.
$20 from Seymour Jackson. Great to see you guys. Love you videos, both tee-hee.
Love you videos, both tee-hee. That should be like a song lyric. The Beaches could do a song with that, since one of their other lyrics I mocked him for doesn't make any sense. $20 from Seymour Jackson. Learn so much from you. Learn so much from you on critical thinking, Matt. Thank you. Which reminds me, I shot 4 videos and got them posted, and at least one of them addresses a specific idea in critical thinking. If you're not already a patron, I'm the guy that forgets to advertise his Patreon every time, but it's patreon.com/atheist debates. All the content goes up for free. But if you chip in $1, you'll get it before anybody else.
$10 from Alan Showerman. I have a good trans lady friend in Texas, thinking of asking her to move out of state with me when I do. Suggestions on anything I can do to support her? And should I try to convince her to leave? You know, what I always say when people talk to me about this is I cannot evaluate the totality of your situation to tell you you should stay and fight for better laws where you currently are, or you should get out to preserve, safety and security for your family. Everybody's got to make that call. If everybody leaves, then the chance of changing things is done, right? So at scale, someone needs to stay. But I would never say to someone, no, you can't. You got to do what's best for yourself and your family.
And the final super chat for tonight, how's that for timing? $20 from De Basilisk. David, sir, is Stephen Kenneth Destiny Bonnell the second alpha or beta, and does he take massive dumps? I have no thought on this.
Really not. not well positioned to really address that.
Okay. On that note, huge thank you, David, for making time. We're very sorry you couldn't be in person. Come back down and see us. I'll introduce you to all of our animals. Everybody, go out and make sure that you subscribe to David's channel, follow his stuff. His book is available now. We thank you all for your super chats, for tuning in. Thank you to our moderators, our call screeners. David, the last word is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Would love to do it again.
I'm going to cheat and take the last word to thank Arden because I got to go have dinner with her in a minute. See you all later.
Thanks. See ya.